Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Supreme Court rethink of judgments that Nawaz Sharif Saab has asked and talked about. We'll be talking about the ramifications, of course, of early hearing as far as the review to the reserved seats case is concerned, the ramifications of that overall as far as the political process is concerned at this time. With regard to this extremely important case, as far as the allies are concerned, as far as the concerns overall, as the review still is awaited to be fixed. We've also seen the comments come from Chief Justice Qazi Faiz Isa on this issue. A little later on, we'll also be talking about Bangladesh and the court's move to scrape most job quotas that have caused the deadly unrest that we've seen. So many people have died in Bangladesh. All of that today on a Perspective. I have with me Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who is a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have Zahid Gishkori, who is a senior journalist. And a little later on, we'll also have Dr. Qamar Cheema, who is an IR expert. Let me go to Zahid Saab. Zahid Saab, this situation that we've seen with regard to particularly the reserved seat case and what it means for the government, what it means for the allies as far as the number game is concerned. And then also as far as the review is concerned, we've also seen the comments that Nawaz Sharif Saab, the head of the PMLN, at the largest party in power at this time, the comments that have come from there, and also the Chief Justice's comments. What do you expect now in the normal course of things in the next couple of weeks?
First of all, thank you very much, Mahrukh, for taking me in your program, and you're very kind always. This is a very important topic, and I just want to correlate Nawaz Sharif recall in the past. If you remember that on the election day, Nawaz Sharif himself made a categorical statement that whosoever wins the election, the party must and the people of Pakistan must given him a heavy mandate. It means that Nawaz Sharif, having an experience and being Pakistan's 3-time Prime Minister, knows the best option that what exactly the country needs for at the moment, because to get rid of all the challenges, Pakistan needs a very strong government, not only which could be able to take very, very strong decision, but also enjoy a two-thirds majority in the parliament for necessary legislation, even sometime to amend the constitution on important issues. This is the reason that he expressed his thought that the Supreme Court, as you know, you yourself is a barrister, that now the decision came out. We can discuss it, we can criticize it, we can comment. That's why he passed these comments, in my opinion, that he perhaps was saying that the Supreme Court should reconsider its judgment. That's because they want, his party, the ruling parties want by law that they want these seats because it's the first of its kind precedence in the country's history. Either now Supreme Court interestingly not only considered PTI a ruling, a parliamentary party in the National Assembly, also of course in the Federal of Pakistan as well. On the other hand, Election Commission of Pakistan, if you talk to them, if you consider their opinion, that they say that as the High Court, Peshawar High Court adopted their argument. So it's a very strange enough that the Supreme Court consider not only the party, a parliamentary party, because it's clear that 41 members National Assembly who are otherwise now independent, they never filled their form, they never showed their affiliation with any political party, they put their form blank, and they did not show their party affiliation. And, under the Election Act, they were supposed to even tell the Speaker National Assembly that either they would be sitting as independent candidate or showing their affiliation. And by and large, 80 plus member National Assembly joined Sunni Tehreek Council.
The kind of course, the background that you are clearly elucidating. Would you say this is a major upset for the parties, the main political parties and their allies at this time, as far as this case is concerned? And with the review looming, it seems to have put the allies and the government in somewhat of a fix. Would you agree with that?
I think it's very rare in the Supreme Court of Pakistan that when the full court sits and passes an order, now that this number is, 8-5. With 8-5, either Supreme Court or both judges change their mind. It seems difficult at this stage of time. This is the reason that the political rhetoric came out from Chief Minister of Punjab, Nawaz Sharif. And she also showed her heart, her party position, that how hurt they were feeling after the Supreme Court judgment. It's rare, in my opinion, that I, as a journalist, think that it might not be possible for Supreme Court to overturn its own ruling in review at this stage of time. But it's very interesting. On the other hand, just let me to complete my argument with the previous discussion that it's very interesting, first of its kind precedent, that the Election Commission and the action as everything, when the Supreme Court made binding on Election Commission of Pakistan by specifying the time, place and date for independent members. Now, it's interesting that either these independent members who join Sunni Ittihad Council would be changing their loyalty to the other party. Would they be able to maintain their membership? Because there are certain questions they can't switch their loyalty, number one. And secondly, in another example, you know better that the Supreme Court itself pointed out the Sunni Ittihad Council legitimacy as a party because they think that the party constitution violates Pakistan constitution spirit. So it means that the party itself, which did not participate in the election, remains under question. Its own position is under question. So there are many ifs and buts in this situation. I see another legal battle in this issue because it's not an easy task. That I don't think so that it would happen in a week or maybe in the time of 2 weeks. This is the reason that Nawaz Sharif himself as a seasoned politician understands that how 2/3 majority to any political party which is ruling the country is important to get rid of all challenges the state of Pakistan is facing in the present circumstances.
This is a slightly technical legal question, but there is also, talk of a 3-day period in which there has to be your allegiance to a political party or whichever party you want to join, and then this is a 15-day period which the court itself has specified in this verdict. That itself is. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Niaz Murtaza on this, and then I'll come back to you. Dr. Niaz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So there is, of course there are other issues, and like Zahid Saab was saying, as far as this very important case is concerned, its own ramifications are concerned. But, this 3-day period, which is the judgment, originally the law says, and then the judgment itself talks about a 15-day period. So there are issues within the judgment on which the government can base their review. And then, on the other hand, of course, we don't have a detailed judgment as far as the case itself is concerned. So in that scenario with a review, and a review which of course the Chief Justice has also said should be taken up at the earliest.
Well, I think review petitions don't normally have a very high chance of success, especially if the verdict is from a full court. But I think the starting point is the Supreme Court's point, not just the 8 judges, but 11 judges, that the Election Commission was wrong in completely shutting out PTI from the election process. It should just have taken away its election symbol, but still allowed it to participate as a party. So there should have been an option at that stage for every PTI person to, run on PTI ticket. That was not allowed by ECP. Then when they treated them as an independent, then within that 3-day period, there should have been a chance to join PTI. That was again not given. So what the Supreme Court is trying to do is to fix that problem that was created by Election Commission's wrong decision. And that's why it has given this period to independents to make another decision, because the full spectrum of options was not available to them in the initial 3-day period. Now the question is whether it should be 3 days or 15 days. When the initial 3-day period is given, that period, that window is known several weeks before to people that it will be coming and people are ready and are in town. But now if the Supreme Court had just given 3 days, some people may have been out of suddenly, some people may have been out of country, and there wouldn't have been enough time for them to come back. But the overall thing is that, these are minor issues, 3 days, 15 days. The important thing to understand is that, the Supreme Court is just rectifying a mistake that the Election Commission did. It's not giving any huge advantage to the PTI.
No, but the question is whether they're rectifying the mistake or not. The question is they have to act within what is legally available, the provisions. Whether a 3-day period is allowed or whether a 15-day period is allowed, whether it can be extended to 15 days, like you are saying, in the interest of fairness, or, whatever. Those are questions that perhaps need to be answered. And like Nawaz Sharif Sahib is saying, perhaps, and the Chief Justice also, at the earliest. Isn't that true, Zahid Sahib? Those clarifications perhaps need to come earlier on. But then we don't have a judgment in place also. That's another issue. Zahid Sahib, can you hear me?
Well, their opinion that at this stage when the candidates were filing their nomination papers, and 41-member National Assembly did not fill the form, did not show their affiliation because they were under pressure and the party was facing their wrath. And this is perhaps the reason that people and massive spirit and the voter spirit perhaps was undermined, and Supreme Court expanded this jurisdiction and understand strengthening the support of argument that perhaps these members really wanted to be a part of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. That's why Supreme Court has locked the time. Number one, this is the situation when Supreme Court of Pakistan took the matter. If you remember, Mahrukh, that when a no confidence motion was moved against the then Prime Minister Imran Khan, and the Deputy Speaker gave the ruling which the Pakistan Supreme Court considered it unconstitutional, and then the Supreme Court, utilizing its power, expanding its mandate, thus dictated the power, time, and everything to the Speaker National Assembly to to do with the no confidence motion, and overall it was implemented by the Parliament, the lower house at that time, and Imran Khan was impeached. This is the same situation, it looks like, because the 8 judges were of the opinion that the people wanted to be a part. These candidates particularly, I'm talking about the 83-member National Assembly now, they have almost all of them have submitted their the declaration, because Supreme Court to waive off the timing conditions, and it can do as the top country court. So this is the reason that perhaps the 8 judges agreed upon on this very point, and they said that PTI is a parliamentary party. But on the other hand, the argument built by the ECP legal team, I focusing on your 3-day time, because it's, of course, election laws categorically say that when a member of parliament, when a candidate wins the election, he or she is supposed to declare his or her paper that either she would be sitting as an independent candidate in the parliament, or she is going to join any political party, either she would be sitting on the opposition desk or on the treasury bench. So it is a situation. Law is loud and clear, but Supreme Court as a top court can do it. And this is the question, very reason that there are some, we can't comment in a full and broad way because the detailed judgment is coming out very soon, I hope so. Then the review petition obviously have been filed by different parties. The election commission might go to the Supreme Court as well. So meantime, either it would be implementing the order of Supreme Court or not. So this is again complicated litigation. I see it's a not easy task and not easy plain sailing. So this is the reason that there are many ifs and buts.
Zahid Saab, I'll come back to you. Niaz Saab, you heard what Zahid Saab is saying. You know, of course, everybody, we can all appreciate at the outset that it's a complicated situation, certainly. And of course, at this time, when we know where the situation stands as far as our economics, economy is concerned, there has been for now months an effort, a consolidated effort, whether in the shape of the Facilitation Council or the government, its members, the Prime Minister, to try to get the economy moving. Of course, one of the main clogs of it is the uncertainty that makes the dollar prices soar, also leads to instability, leads to a lot of speculation, which is necessarily not good for the stock market, for the overall situation. Do you think that this may, unfortunately, lead to that kind of a situation if it's not, controlled quickly, if it's not, if there's not clear certainty very quickly on this issue?
Well, certainly, and I think, the government should not panic and overreact, because that's creating, political uncertainty when it announced that, it may not accept the verdict of Supreme Court. It may file a, Article 6 case or try to get PTI banned. The very next day, the stock market fell by about 2%. It had been, rising and rising. So the best thing is for the government to calm down. Having 2/3 majority is not necessary for it to survive. The People's Party was able to pass the 18th Amendment without a 2/3 majority by getting every other party on board. And when you have every other party on board, you normally do better legislation, because all the parties on board, their ideas are taking, rather than the situation where one party has a 2/3 majority and just steamrolls its ideas. So just relax. This is not the end of the world. Focus on getting the economy back. File your petition. Remember, even PTI's review petition for the BAT case is still pending for 6 months. Don't try to create a panic about the fact that the, Supreme Court is not hearing your petition immediately. That happens normally. The Supreme Court has a backlog of 50,000 cases. So it's unrealistic to expect that, a case which has just been decided last week would certainly be, given priority and decided when so many other cases are decided. Just calm down, accept the verdict, file your review, and get on with the business of governance.
But Niaz Saab, we talk about legislation. I'm going to also take Zahid Saab's view on this and then come back to you. You've mentioned legislation. Zahid Saab, there is, of course, when we started, the elections happened, we saw, of course, even the PMLN and Nawaz Sharif Saab particularly, come out and talk about the fact that, it was a verdict which, the numbers themselves were not ideal for any one political party. In this situation, with the reserve seat scenario, the kind of legislation where you need 2/3 majority, when we talk about constitutional amendments, when we talk about reform, when we talk about, even economic reform, we talk about legal reform, we need any government needs the kind of numbers that at this time, might be in jeopardy. And that itself is a cause of concern for the government. Or you think that, like Niaz Saab is saying, perhaps, with all the other allies, they will regardless forge ahead?
Look, Mahrukh, I think it's understandable, as Niaz Saab is making a very well point, that government should focus on people problems, the electricity problem, the IPPs, the payment issues, and other skyrocketing and the overtaxes and burden on the people. to give the people of Pakistan the relief, the very important point everyone wants for. But on the other hand, we should also not ignore the challenges state is facing recently. On many fronts, the war against terrorism, and terrorism again arises alarmingly in Pakistan, and Pakistan announced operation as well. So it's a political consensus needed on such issues, and necessary legislation is required, and the powerful government in the center is mandatory. And this is the reason that it's the third time that a very weak government we can see in the center, and this is the reason that opposition and the political turmoil and the government cannot take any important decision without taking its alloy into the confidence. Perhaps government showed hurriness. I think in the recent times, in the recent two decisions, government could not consult with its allies on the case of filing a case of against Imran Khan and the former president and Qasim Suri under Article 6 and banning PTI again. These decisions were not consulted well. I think it could be a very knee-jerk reaction just to show the opposition strong muscle being in the government. So I think I don't see any full outcome would come out from such decisions. The government is supposed to take people issues along with this, of course, the might government wants in the parliament. But as I told you,
look at Punjab. We have we have a chief minister who's focused on trying to ensure that the systems are revitalized, revolutionized in a lot of cases, to help people, whether we look at health, whether we look at, as far as police is concerned, as far as, enforcement is concerned, as protection of human rights, women's rights are concerned, all those issues are concerned. So we see, a clear focus there. As far as the center is concerned, we have a prime minister who seems to be focused on trying to garner investment. This does, in that sense, and Niaz is right that they have to probably just forge ahead with regard to and let things take their course. But in the sense that it's going to take its how and to what extent it's going to lead to uncertainty is really the question, right, Niaz?
Yeah, I mean, so the government has done well in some ways. So look at the IMF agreement. It just took 4 to 5 months. PPP in 2008 took 7 or 8 months. PTI in 2018 took over a year. Compared to that, this government has, finished the IMF agreement within just 4 to 5 months. Even in 2022, with the change from Mr. Miftah to Mr. Dar, it took 7 or 8 months. So there's a solid beginning. The IMF deal is there so quickly. Now focus on getting the money from, the Gulf countries. There are some positive vibes. There have been several, visits. So if it tries to create this impression that, it's in a perilous position, then obviously, that's going to create perceptions against the government. Take it into their strides. Fine. We'll file a review petition, but now we are focused on, our work. We have to take the next step, get foreign investment, do that, do this, so that there is, a positive vibe, a buzz about the government. Otherwise, it
doesn't go. Now, for example, the worst case scenario for the government, I'm going to take Zahid Saab's view on this also, but the worst case scenario, it seems like, if the review doesn't, garner the kind of success that the government would want, then we are looking at them losing a significant number of seats. What does that mean?
They should try to, get across the board support like PPP did in 2009 with the, 18th Amendment. It wasn't PPP alone. So that's where you have to build bridges. You have to, compromise with other parties, get them on board and, develop better ideas. If your ideas are good and if they are in people's interest, opposition parties would not like to, oppose it. They would like to be, part of the deal so that they also get some credit. So this is the way PTI, PMLN should govern. Normally it's used to having its own two-thirds majorities in the 1990s, even in 2013. But now this is a different ball game. And I think Mr. Shehbaz Sharif is better geared for this kind of, compromising, making deals with others. He's a better person. He's more flexible than Mr. Nawaz Sharif. So he's ideally cut for the job. So forget about, these decisions and focus on governance so that people have a positive view. And even if you have to go into new elections down the road, if you start losing your majority, then at least, you'll have something to show to the people. Like you're saying in Punjab, there's, a buzz around it. There's a very strong media presence for the chief minister, more than, what you had for Mr. Bazaar. So build on that, focus on that instead of, giving all these kind of political statements which create, panic in the market.
Zahid, do you think that this kind of, what Niaz is saying, do you think that the kind of politics as far as agreement is concerned, some tacit kind of agreement is possible between, for example, the PMLN and the opposition, which is, mainly the PTI-led Sunni Ittihad, or whether it's just going to be PTI now, whatever. Do you think it's possible that there can be some sort of a, working relationship?
Look, Mahrukh, in game of politics, always there is a possibility, obviously, but in the present situation, I don't see any agreement among all political parties sitting in the parliament. They would think about the state, they would think about the national interest, they would think about the people, and they got mandates from. I don't see, by the way, this is very unfortunate. This is the reason that the state is suffering, that three political parties, several political parties having equal numbers almost, and perhaps this is the reason in the past 7 to 8 years in the political trajectory, this state is suffering, that no political party is bringing up a huge mandate, not convincing their voters, and they are not taking the required numbers which otherwise the state of Pakistan needed. So this is the reason that you can and we all can see the unrest, political unrest, and this is one of the major stumbling blocks, not only for the government to take this decision on important issues, but also, and we were discussing about the Supreme Court review petition and many other things. And the government wants to, perhaps, introduce two new constitutional amendments in different reasons, because the one reason is about the National Finance Commission shares to the provinces up, because after 18th Amendment, there is a significant well thought out narrative within the government and the establishment as well, because they want to review it because the censor is quite weak when it comes to handle with mega projects and bigger bargains with IPP and with IMF and other international players. So perhaps the government wants that, number one, and secondly, with its own legislation as well.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for this segment. Thank you so much for, it's always a pleasure, and your opinion is always welcome. Niaz, thank you so much for being with us today on this very important segment. We'll be taking a short break, after which we will come back and talk about what's happening in Bangladesh and the recent decision of the Supreme Court with regard to the quota of the government as far as jobs are concerned. All of that today. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We have with us Dr. Qamar Cheema for this segment. Dr. Qamar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Happening as far as Bangladesh is concerned, of course, we've seen it's resulted in more than 100 deaths as for these violent protests that we've seen, with a huge student body also protesting against the job quota. We've also seen the recent ruling To what significance do you think this will happen? The government also, Anisul Haq Saab, the minister, has also said and confirmed, the law minister there, that they are going to implement this ruling within days. How do you look at this now at this time, the situation? Do you think it's going to calm down? You think there's going to be, they're going to be able to, diffuse the violence, so to speak?
Thank you very much. I personally believe that the entire situation is now calmed down. Knowing that the fact that the Supreme Court has answered the call of the protesters, and now the 93% of all the appointments in the government jobs will be on the merit base, and only 7% will be reserved. And of that 7%, 5% are for those the families of those who fought in the 1971, and the rest 2% for others. So this is one thing. So the Supreme Court has set the course. The government is going to implement. This is one thing. But this has given a new trend in the politics and the society in Bangladesh. And that trend is that the youth has got that power which no political party was having. The youth can bring down the government. Youth can bring a challenge to the government. And if you remember, initially the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina Wajid, didn't take the youth serious. And when the protesters started, she started calling them as Razakars, so which they considered that she's trying to give reference to the history of back in 1971. So the students, they started calling themselves as Razakar. Yes, we are Razakar. And they started protesting. And the students' only demand was that you want to have a control over the country by bribing the people, by giving them the jobs. And you should stop this bribe. And the large section of the population in Bangladesh comprises of youth. So all the jobs should be based on the merit, and I think it was something which was largely acceptable to everyone in Bangladesh. It was a demand that was coming not just from the youth, but youth led this entire protest. But the society, politicians, opposition, they all agreed that this monopoly of Sheikh Hasina Wajid of giving all these jobs to his own party loyalists should end. Otherwise, it will be a complete control of her and her party on the entire system. But somehow the youth has come forward, and then the Supreme Court, knowing the temperature of the country where there is the military is there in entire country, and the military was standing outside the Supreme Court even. But the Supreme Court has taken a decision which I think is acceptable to everyone, and Sheikh Hasina Wajid got a face-saving situation with this decision.
Do you think that, we've also seen these demonstrations happen other than Bangladesh? We've seen them happen in the US, in the UK also. There were clashes reported in East London between pro and anti-government groups also. Do you think this shows, overall, as far as the situation is concerned with regard to the economy in Bangladesh, their, how well their economy is doing, their overall, the government and its relationship with, for example, these young protesters? You've also talked about this for a while. How she probably underestimated them when we talk about the Prime Minister. And you think that this, after this is one of those things that can perhaps, snowball into other issues, that once, of course, the government has now realized that the power of youth cannot be underestimated, and on a host of other issues also. This is something that the Bangladesh government is now cognizant of after the kind of clashes we've seen. So many have died also.
Well, I think there is one thing that has come forward, and that is that since virtually there is no opposition in the country, and either the Sheikh Hasina Wajid eliminated the opposition, she has support of the military and the bureaucracy with her, and then secondly, I think the new pole of power has emerged, and that pole of power is a student politics, and I think that's where it could be a challenging. One, Sheikh Hasina Wajid is definitely old. She's trying to transfer the power to her daughter. who is working in, I think, WHO these days. And for that matter, she is giving her the international exposure. And the new message has gone in the Bangladesh, and that message is that youth can lead the country. And for that matter, if you will see in coming months, and you will see that a new political party can be established, which will be comprised by the youth, and it will be the youth-led revolution. Because it's been the fourth time I think she's in power, and all the time when she comes in power, she uses the reference to the history, 1971. She tries to get the support from the India. Even India factor was very much dominant there before the elections right now. And for example, anti-India campaign has been in Bangladesh, where the Indian government was criticized for supporting Sheikh Hasina Wajid. And if you remember, that the Indian Foreign Ministry of External Affairs gave a statement calling it as an internal matter of Bangladesh, because they knew that if they will support Hasina Wajid, to whom they did support while during the elections, although the elections were not considered as on merit, but they supported the Sheikh Hasina Wajid, knowing that they needed Hasina Wajid. But in this matter, they didn't speak, knowing that the sentiments are against Hasina Wajid. She's unpopular, but somehow she managed the election. So I think a new political force may emerge in coming months and years, and that force would be the youth. They are going to take the matter of the society, and they are going to take those issues at the top level. And one more thing, more than 114 people have been killed, and I think this is something which is, when you give a martyrdom or when you give it's a sort of...
Dr. Qamar, I'm going to, what is the reason in Europe? I mean, we talk about Bangladesh's, economic situation. Their economic growth has, in certain areas, been quite rapid. But why do you think it hasn't translated into jobs for the youth to an extent where this is manifested into such a huge issue?
Well, there is one thing. I think the one sector where the first you have to understand the population of the country. The population is very high. One thing. The second, what you need to understand that the only sector which is there is the textile sector. That's where they are growing. They are not growing in IT or manufacturing or car production or other things. So they export only in the textile sector. It's leading. They're still in the IMF program. Remember, they are not in a they are not running the country independently. So only relying on textile, not having diversified economy, not engaging the youth. And for example, tarnishing the image like people like Muhammad Yunus, who created the Grameen Bank, and even he has been punished. So it's a sort of economic nationalism coming from Sheikh Hasina Wajid, trying to keep a control of her party and herself on the country, on not letting the country grow the way it wants to grow. I think there's some sort of a micromanagement in the country. I think it is not translating or not letting the country to grow on the principle of liberal economy. So the country is growing on the principle of this economic nationalism, and the country is growing on this principle that, okay, if this country will only survive because if we will remember the martyrs of the 1971. So she's taking reference from history. I think this is something which has been a problem for Hasina Wajid and a problem for India, and it's not something, a more independent approach towards economy.
But you're confident that now, the situation seems to have diffused to an extent where we'll see things returning back to normal, with perhaps a newer guard sort of, being formed, and the old guard perhaps, may have realized that they can't cling on to power, and perhaps, a new kind of this revolution will have given rise to that new style of politics. You agree with that?
Yeah, there is a new style of politics, and always there is a room for new developments, and particularly in this case, where the other political parties, for example, I think the Islamists and the others, they were already labeled as, for example, the terrorists, or they were not being treated that way. Khalda Zia was not in a position or she's old, she's ill, and she couldn't lead the party. And the other parties are also not at national level. So she was not having that kind of an opposition. So even opposition thought that we should boycott the elections, which they did in the previous, in the January this year. So I think that's why the new opposition, a new political force needs to come, and which is coming. And I'm very much hopeful. One, the protesters will go home. They will stop protesting because their demands have been met. But I think this will give a new life to the politics in Bangladesh. It will create a new wave of political leaders. A young political class will emerge, which will speak for the demands of the people of Bangladesh, because this is an old leadership talking about the old politics, remembering more history, and talking less and about the contemporary societal and economic challenges for the country.
Thank you so much, Qamar Cheema sir. Thank you for your very valuable input. Of course, one hopes that there will be, like you said, things will return back to normal as far as Bangladesh is concerned, and the violence will cease, and things will go back to normal, and we will see perhaps a change in politics also, which is what the youth there seems to have been advocating for. Thank you so much for joining us today on that.